Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic that I find absolutely fascinating: dark psychology.
Mm.
You sent over some seriously intriguing excerpts from a book about this, and I'm really excited to unpack all this together.
I think what's so interesting about dark psychology is that it's not just about, you know, criminals or anything like that. It's about these manipulative tactics that people use, sometimes even without realizing it?
Right. It's like it's all around us.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so our goal here today with this deep dive is to basically give everyone listening the knowledge to actually spot these tactics so they're not like totally caught off guard.
It's like having like a toolkit.
A toolkit.
Yeah, for becoming more discerning. The more you know about these tactics, the harder it is to actually be manipulated by them, right?
Okay,
Buck?
so I love that. Okay, so let's start with like the basics, right? What is dark psychology?
So, like, at its core, dark psychology is the study of how people use psychological tactics to influence others, sometimes exploit others. It really delves into those parts of human nature that are driven by self-interest.
So we're not just talking about like, supervillains
Well,
or
no. This is like everyday stuff.
Right. Okay, got it. So it's everywhere.
While it's definitely helped us understand, criminal minds and all that, it's also just about the subtle ways people try to get what they want in just normal, everyday interactions.
Like at the grocery store or
Or like at work.
Yeah, okay. I'm already starting to think about some people. Okay. Before we get into the examples though,
Hmm.
where did this whole concept of dark psychology come from? Like when did it start?
So the actual term itself, it gained prominence in the early 2000s, partly driven by, cyber criminals and trying to understand, like, their motivations and tactics.
It's like Sherlock Holmes but for like the internet.
Yes, exactly.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just criminals, right? Like this idea of dark psychology.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The study of dark psychology has had a huge impact on, like, criminal profiling, law enforcement, even just our basic understanding of human interaction in general.
And let's be real, we all love a good true crime show or psychological thriller.
Exactly.
Like we're fascinated by that stuff. So I guess it's good to understand it, right?
Right, exactly. That fascination can actually help us understand these more subtle forms of manipulation that we encounter every single day.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Exactly. The more you understand the tactics, the better you're able to deal with it.
I like it. Okay, so let's get into the specifics. Are there like, I don't know, telltale signs? Like a checklist for dark personality traits?
Researchers have actually identified 9 traits that are commonly associated with dark psychology.
9. Okay.
Now, having 1 or 2 of these traits doesn't automatically make someone a manipulator, but a combination, especially if they're really strongly expressed, can be a red flag.
It's like a recipe, you need all the right ingredients. Right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so what are these 9 dark personality traits?
So we have narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, sadism, moral disengagement, egoism, spitefulness, entitlement, and then manipulative tendency.
Okay, that is a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing some of those are more common than others.
Yes. And within those 9, there's actually a smaller group called a dark triad. Have you heard of that?
The dark triad. It sounds a little ominous.
Yes. It's made up of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And those 3 are definitely the ones that are studied the most and that are usually the most problematic.
Okay. The dark triad. So let's break it down. First up, narcissism. I feel like we've all met that person, right? That person who's a little too in love with themselves.
Yeah.
But how does that play into dark psychology? Like, what's the connection?
So in this context, it goes beyond just like a big ego, right? It's a very deep-seated belief in their own superiority. They constantly need to be admired. They lack empathy. And they often exploit others to get that validation that they crave.
It's not just vanity. It's like they're not considering other people at all.
Exactly. Think of like the coworker that takes credit for your work, or like the friend that always steers the conversation back to themselves.
I see. Okay, so that's narcissism. What about Machiavellianism?
Machiavellianism. So this is named after Niccolo Machiavelli. He was a political philosopher known for his, let's just say, pragmatic strategies for gaining power. Right. And so in psychology, Machiavellianism describes people that are like manipulative, deceitful, and exploitative.
Ends justify the means.
Yeah. They're okay with hurting people to get what they want.
Okay, got it. And now the last of the dark triad, psychopathy. I have to admit, this one always makes me think of like serial killers.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, it's definitely often associated with criminal behavior, but, it is a much broader trait than that. Psychopaths, they really lack empathy. They don't feel remorse, no guilt.
Oh, wow.
But, and this is what's so tricky about them, they can be incredibly charming, so persuasive, which, can make them dangerous, of course.
Not just being evil. It's like they don't have a conscience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can be so likable, which makes it easy to manipulate other people.
Okay, so the dark triad, a scary combination.
Yeah.
But I have to ask this question. If these traits are so negative, why do they even exist? Like, shouldn't evolution have gotten rid of them,
Yeah. That's a question that it's really puzzled psychologists for a long time. And as it turns out, there might be a surprising answer. So there's a couple groundbreaking studies, one in 2002 and then another one in 2009, and they really shed light on this.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. What did those studies find?
So the 2002 study, it really focused on relationships, how dark triad traits affect our social relationships. And they actually found that especially in short-term relationships, people with these traits were often seen as more attractive.
Wait, so being manipulative and lacking empathy can make you more attractive? That doesn't sound right.
I know, it's counterintuitive, but the study suggests that these traits might signal confidence or assertiveness, which, some people might find appealing.
Right. Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that. In our world where we're kind of obsessed with, alpha personalities, I could see that. But surely those relationships can't last very long.
You're right. While these traits might give a short-term advantage, ultimately they lead to unstable and damaging relationships.
Right. Makes sense.
And then that 2009 study really confirmed that. Individuals with strong dark triad traits, they were way more successful at short-term mating, but way less successful at forming, stable long-term bonds.
So it's like maybe they help you get someone, but they don't help you keep someone.
Exactly.
Okay, so even though these traits might offer some short-term benefits, they don't actually lead to a more fulfilling or successful life in the long run.
That seems to be the case. And interestingly enough, that pattern also seems to play out in the workplace too.
Well, I can only imagine how these traits would manifest in a really competitive work environment.
Yeah. So there was this meta-analysis that looked at this in 2012. They examined the dark triad's impact on the workplace, and they found that Machiavellianism and psychopathy, they led to a lot of negative behaviors like decreased performance, more conflict.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, and here's the kicker, those with high narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy were also more likely to have higher salaries, climb the corporate ladder faster, occupy leadership positions.
Hold on. So you're telling me that being manipulative can actually help you get ahead?
Sadly, in some situations, that seems to be the case. The study suggests that these traits, combined with charisma and strategic thinking, can actually give people a real advantage in competitive settings.
It's fascinating, but also a little disturbing.
Right.
Makes you think about the kind of leaders we're rewarding in society.
It definitely raises some important questions. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's talk about that dirty dozen test that you mentioned.
It's dirty dozen, yeah. That's that quick assessment to kind of see where you fall with the dark triad, right?
Exactly.
I'm a little scared to know my score, honestly.
It's really just a tool for self-awareness. It's not about labeling people. It's more about understanding how these traits might influence us.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the dark triad, and we've talked about how those traits can show up in different areas of life, relationships, workplace. But let's get practical now. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are some of the common manipulation tactics that people use?
So the book you sent over, it really outlines several different techniques, and it's helpful to think about them in a few categories, right?
Okay.
So some of them are more obvious, like lying, where the person just distorts the truth to get what they want.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
Then there are tactics that are more emotionally manipulative.
Yeah.
So there's love flooding, which involves showering someone with tons of praise and attention, but it's not out of genuine affection. It's to get something from them.
So when someone needs a favor from you and suddenly they're your best friend?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or the opposite of that is love denial. So that's where affection is withheld as punishment.
Ooh, that's messed up. That's playing with someone's emotions.
Exactly. And then there are tactics like withdrawal, the silent treatment, the classic. Or restricting choices, where you think you have options, but the manipulator has actually carefully set it up so you're only going to pick what they want.
It's like they're setting a trap.
Yes, exactly. And then there are more like subtle tactics that really play with, language and logic.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like semantic manipulation, where they like twist the meaning of words so they might agree to something and later be like, oh, no, 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 I meant this other thing, right?
Oh, that's so
It's a way
frustrating.
to gaslight you, to make you question your own like understanding of things.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's reverse psychology, where they get you to do what they want by like the opposite.
That one's almost a classic.
Yeah. And finally, reason, which reason sounds really positive, but manipulators use it to disguise their true agenda.
So they're using logic to hide their true intentions.
Exactly. And one last tactic I'll mention is social comparison, where they make you feel insecure by comparing you to other people.
Ugh, I hate that one.
Yeah, it plays on our insecurity.
Yeah. Okay, that was a lot. It's like, I need a decoder ring just to have a conversation.
That's why we're doing this. Once you're aware of these tactics, you can spot them and you can protect yourself.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so is everyone equally susceptible to manipulation?
Yeah.
Or are there certain types of people who are more likely to be targeted?
Anyone can be manipulated, really. It just depends on the circumstances, right?
Okay.
But there are definitely certain things that can make people more vulnerable.
Okay. Like what?
Like if they have low self-esteem, or maybe they have a really strong need for approval, or even, if they're just going through a difficult time in their life, that can make them more susceptible.
So it's not just about the manipulator, it's also about the person they're targeting.
Exactly. They're really good at sensing those vulnerabilities and then exploiting them.
That's a bit scary.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any, like, specific personality types that are, I don't know, like, more prone to manipulating others?
Well, like we talked about, people with those strong dark triad traits, those are usually the master manipulators. But then also certain professions or like roles where persuasion is like a big part of the job.
Like salespeople.
Yeah. Salespeople, politicians.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Those are like roles where persuasion is like literally in the job description.
Exact.
But it's not like everyone who's in those professions is manipulative.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But it's good to be aware of that potential, right, in those contexts.
And this is all incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Incredibly valuable. But, let's get really practical. How do we actually spot manipulation in action? Like, are there red flags we should look for? What can we do?
The key is to really pay attention. Pay attention to your emotions. Analyze the other person's behavior. And this is a big one, trust your gut.
Okay, let's break those down.
Mm-hmm.
First up, paying attention to our emotions. So if someone's trying to manipulate us, what should we be feeling?
Well, manipulators, they want you to feel certain ways so they can get their way, right? So if you're consistently feeling pressured, guilty, confused, or obligated, especially in an interaction with a specific person, that could be a sign.
So if something feels off,
Yes.
that's my cue to be like, hold on, wait a minute.
Exactly. Your emotions are like your internal alarm system.
I like that. Okay. What about analyzing behavior?
So pay very close attention to their words, their actions. Are they using any of those tactics that we talked about?
Okay.
Are they trying to control the conversation?
Yeah.
Steer it in a specific direction. Dismiss your concerns.
It's like being a detective, right?
Yes.
Looking for clues. Okay. I like that. I'm a manipulation detective.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about trusting our gut? What do you mean by that?
So sometimes you just know, right? Something's not right, even if you can't explain it.
Yeah.
Our intuition, it's a really powerful tool. It's usually based on like subconscious observations that we made.
So if my gut is telling me something's wrong, I should listen.
Always err on the side of caution,
Yeah.
Your intuition is your compass. It's guiding you towards what's best for you.
Okay, this is really, really helpful. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about those people who take manipulation to like another level. The emotional predators.
Emotional predators, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the people who specifically target people's emotions, exploit them, control them.
Like emotional vampires.
Yeah. They might use tactics like love bombing or gaslighting, guilt tripping.
That's terrifying. How do we protect ourselves from that?
Boundaries. Boundaries are crucial.
Boundaries.
Don't be afraid to say no, assert your needs, and walk away if something feels toxic. Don't be afraid to do that.
So it's like our emotional shields.
Exactly. Essential for healthy relationships. And don't be afraid to be assertive, Communicate clearly what you need, what you expect. Surround yourself with supportive people, friends, family, maybe even a therapist.
It's like having your own support network.
Yeah, to help you stay grounded. Recognize those red flags.
Okay. And if you ever feel like threatened or unsafe, don't hesitate to seek professional help.
Right,
This
exactly.
is so empowering. I'm feeling much more equipped to deal with all this now.
That's what we want. Knowledge is your best defense.
Speaking of defense,
Mhm.
how does emotional intelligence fit into all of this? I've heard that term a lot, but how does it relate to dark psychology and all of this?
So emotional intelligence, it's basically your ability to understand and manage your own emotions, and then also recognize and empathize with the emotions of other people.
Okay.
So it's like having an emotional roadmap.
Roadmap.
And here's the key. People with high emotional intelligence are way less likely to be manipulated.
Okay, tell me more about that. How does that work?
So when you're aware of your own emotions, you're less likely to be swayed by someone who's trying to, trigger those emotions to get their way,
Okay.
right? You're also better at reading other people,
Makes sense.
which helps you spot, insincerity.
It's like having a shield.
Exactly. Developing your emotional intelligence, it's one of the best ways to protect yourself.
Okay. This is starting to all make sense. But I have to ask about those, infamous cases of manipulation and mind control.
Oh,
Like the ones that become documentaries or true crime podcasts.
It's like Charles Manson or Ted Bundy.
Yeah. Those are extreme examples, I know, but, it's
They
fascinating.
highlight how powerful manipulation can be.
Yeah.
They were masters at using charisma and persuasion and all these tactics to control and exploit people.
So those are stories for another day.
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, while we're on the topic of, chilling psychological experiments,
Yeah.
can we talk about the Stanford prison experiment?
Absolutely. That study, it was conducted in the early 70s, and it really showed how easy it is for people to conform to social roles.
Okay. Remind me about that one.
So they created this mock prison, right?
Yep.
And they randomly assigned these students as either prisoners or guards. And they wanted to see, how would their behavior change based on, which role they were given.
So, they were just playing pretend, but then it became very real.
Yeah, and the results were shocking.
Really?
Yeah. The guards, even though they were, ordinary students, they became authoritarian. They became abusive very quickly.
That's so scary to think about.
It highlights the power of situations, and authority.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if, we all have that capacity.
It brings up an important point, recognizing our own dark side. We all have the potential for both good and bad within us.
Right.
Oh.
This is making me a little uncomfortable. Are you saying we all have the potential to be manipulative?
I'm not saying that. But we do all have the capacity for self-interest, putting our needs first, even if it means bending the rules or justifying actions that might hurt other people.
It's like this hidden part of ourselves we don't like to acknowledge.
Right. But the first step to dealing with it is to just acknowledge that it exists.
Okay, so what if we do some, soul searching, and we realize, yeah, maybe I have used some of these tactics before. What do we do with that?
The book actually has some great advice on, how to break free from those patterns.
Okay.
The key is, becoming more self-aware, understanding your motivations, and learning healthier ways to communicate.
So it's like emotional spring cleaning.
Yeah. Get rid of those toxic patterns.
Love that analogy. Okay.
Yeah.
But how do you actually break free from a manipulative relationship? That sounds really hard.
It is. But it's possible. The first step is really building a support network.
Okay, so people you can trust.
Exactly. Friends, family, people that can offer support and perspective. Then you need to prioritize yourself, your own well-being. Start focusing on what you need, what you want, what makes you happy. You deserve to be treated with respect.
It's so easy to lose yourself in a relationship like that, where you're always putting your needs second.
Yeah, it's crucial to reclaim yourself. Then accept that it's going to be scary. Leaving is terrifying. You might feel guilty. You might feel anxious. You might doubt yourself. But all of those feelings are normal.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly.
It hurts, but it's necessary.
And be prepared. It's going to be challenging,
Yeah.
Leaving and then staying away.
Right.
Manipulators, they try to control their victims. So you have to be strong. You have to be assertive.
Yeah.
Lean on your support network. Seek help if you need it.
This is intense, but I feel empowered too.
That's good. Remember, you're not alone. Focus on building a safe and independent life.
So what happens after you leave and you have your support network? What's next?
Then you focus on rebuilding your self-esteem, because manipulators, they really chip away at your self-worth, So you have to rebuild that. Start doing things that you enjoy. Reconnect with your passions. Surround yourself with people that value you.
Like you're taking your power back.
Exactly. It's a journey of healing,
Hmm.
self-discovery, reclaiming your strength. It's not going to be easy, but it is possible.
This has been really insightful. We've covered so much. The traits, the tactics, the impact it has on relationships, even some practical tips. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm walking away with so much.
That's what we want. Understanding these concepts helps us navigate the world.
Absolutely. Before we move on, anything else you want to highlight about dark psychology?
Just a reminder, we focused on the kind of darker side of human behavior, but we also have this incredible capacity for empathy, compassion, and connection.
That's such an important point. It's about the whole spectrum of human behavior, not just the bad stuff.
Exactly.
So to everyone listening, as we get ready for the next part of this deep dive, keep that in mind. You have the power to choose who you allow into your life and how you respond to people who might be trying to manipulate you.
Hmm.
Stay vigilant, trust your gut, and remember your worth.
And, building on that idea of the full spectrum of human behavior, let's shift gears a bit and talk about how some of the principles of psychology can actually be used for, like, positive influence, ethical persuasion.
Okay, so instead of just defending ourselves,
Yeah.
we're now going to learn how to be more persuasive ourselves.
Exactly. It's about giving you the tools to be a more, like, effective communicator, a
Hmm.
more effective influencer.
Okay, I like it. I'm all ears. Let's talk about ethical persuasion. Where do we even begin?
So the book that you sent over, it outlines some really powerful persuasion techniques, and they're all based on, psychology, understanding motivation.
All right, let's dive in. What's the first technique we need to master?
One of the most powerful techniques is storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah. Humans are wired for stories. We connect with them emotionally, we remember them, and they can be incredibly persuasive.
So it's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly. A good story, a well-crafted story, it makes the message so much more memorable.
Okay,
More persuasive because it really taps into, like, our emotions.
I can see how that would be useful in so many areas, like marketing, public speaking,
Yeah.
even just our everyday conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Think about those commercials that tell, like, a heartwarming story or, like, a TED Talk that just, like, sucks you in with a personal anecdote.
Yeah.
That's the power of storytelling.
Okay, storytelling, check. What else do we need in our, persuasion toolkit?
Another big one is know your audience.
Know your audience, okay.
Really effective persuaders, they understand their audience's values, their beliefs, their motivations, even, their fears and insecurities.
So it's like you need to tailor your message to the specific people you're trying to persuade.
It's like, imagine a tailor, right, crafting a custom suit. They need the right measurements to create something that fits perfectly.
Hmm.
So the more you know about your audience, the better you can, like, craft a message that's going to resonate with them.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'm noticing a theme here. It seems like a lot of these techniques, it's not about tricking people, it's about empathy. It's about understanding.
You're right. Ethical persuasion, it's not about manipulation or coercion. It's about, like, really connecting with people, understanding their perspective, finding common ground.
It's more about collaboration than control.
Yeah.
I like that. What are some other techniques?
Another really effective one is show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, so instead of just talking about something, try to bring it to life. Use visuals, examples, demonstrations.
A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to respond to visual information. So incorporating visuals, it's going to make your message way more engaging, more memorable, more persuasive.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. A powerful image or, seeing a demonstration, that can really get a point across. What else? What else can we do to be more persuasive?
Being reasonable, that's another big one.
Being reasonable.
Yeah, so this doesn't mean you have to agree with everything the other person is saying, but it's about, like, coming to the conversation willing to listen,
Okay.
understand their point of view, and then maybe try to find areas of agreement.
So build bridges, not walls.
Exactly. When you demonstrate that you're reasonable, you're building trust,
Hmm.
and then that really opens the door for a more productive conversation.
It's a good reminder. I can be pretty stubborn sometimes, so yeah, I can see how that would help. Okay, so be reasonable, check. What's next?
This one might seem counterintuitive, but appealing to emotions.
Wait, I thought persuasion was all about, logic and reason.
Logic and reason are definitely important, but they're not the whole story. We're emotional creatures, and a lot of our decisions are influenced by how we feel, even when we think we're being completely logical.
So it's about connecting with people on like a deeper level.
Exactly. A message that evokes emotion, whether it's joy, hope, or even a sense of urgency, it's going to be way more persuasive.
I can see that. Yeah, sometimes it's like a powerful story or an image that really moves us to, you know, take action. Okay, emotions are important. What else?
This one is a little more subtle, but watch body language.
No, the unspoken language.
Exactly. Body language can tell you so much about how a person is really feeling, even if their words are saying something different.
Right.
A skilled persuader pays attention to both their own body language and the body language of the person they're talking to.
It's like a secret dance,
Yeah.
trying to like mirror each other and create a connection.
And by mirroring someone's body language, you can actually build rapport.
Oh, interesting.
You create that connection, which then makes them more receptive to your message.
I never thought about it that way.
Hmm?
But it makes sense. Okay, body language, check. What else? What other techniques?
Using leading questions can be very effective, but it's important to use them ethically.
Leading questions, okay.
Yeah. So a leading question basically guides the listener towards a specific answer or viewpoint.
So you're kind of like planting a seed, but you're encouraging it to grow in a certain direction.
Exactly. By phrasing your questions carefully, you can really influence how someone thinks.
It's kind of trippy when you think about it that way. Like how much our words actually shape like how other people see things.
Language is powerful. And this next one might seem really obvious, but it's actually often overlooked. Listening skills.
Wait, I thought persuasion was about talking. Getting your point across.
It is, but the really skilled persuaders, they're also really good listeners.
Okay.
They listen attentively, they ask clarifying questions, and they show genuine interest.
So it's about a two-way conversation, not just me talking at you, trying to get you to agree with me.
Exactly. Active listening shows respect, builds rapport,
Yeah.
and it helps you understand where they're coming from, which can be really valuable when you're trying to persuade them.
Okay, this is making me realize that I need to work on my listening skills. I can get easily distracted, or I want to jump in with my own thoughts.
It's definitely a skill we can all work on. Being present, being engaged. That makes all the difference.
Okay, listening skills noted. What else can we add to our persuasion arsenal?
Another one is using social proof. So people are more likely to be persuaded by something if they see other people doing it.
It's like the bandwagon effect.
Exactly. We're social creatures, right? We look to others for cues on how to behave, what to believe. This is why testimonials, reviews, influencer marketing, all of that stuff, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, we all want to fit in, be part of the group. So if everyone's doing it, it must be the right thing, right?
That's the logic. We're more likely to trust something if it's socially validated. And closely related to social proof is the concept of authority.
Okay, so are you saying we're more likely to be persuaded by someone we see as like an expert, an authority figure?
Yes. Whether it's an expert in a specific field, a leader, even a celebrity, their endorsements carry a lot of weight.
It's like those commercials with doctors recommending a certain product. We're like, oh, well, they're a doctor. They must know what they're talking about.
Right. Authority figures have that power.
Okay, that makes sense. What other persuasion techniques should we know?
Timing is important.
Timing. Okay.
Yeah. People are more receptive to messages at certain times. A skilled persuader pays attention to those cues to figure out the best time to present their message.
So it's about like reading the room.
Yeah.
And striking while the iron is hot.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And then repetition.
Repetition.
The repetition can actually be really effective.
Really?
The more we hear something, the more likely we are to remember it and to believe it.
It's like those jingles, those advertising jingles that get stuck in your head.
Exactly.
And then you're like humming it later.
And then you're at the store and you buy the product.
And you're buying it. Okay.
Hmm.
Repetition.
Yeah.
Check. This is really helpful. Any final thoughts on persuasion before we move on?
Just remember, persuasion is not about manipulation. It's not about tricking people into doing something they don't want to do.
Okay, yeah.
It's about ethical influence and finding solutions that benefit everyone involved.
So like finding common ground,
Yeah.
creating win-win situations.
Exactly. It's about using these techniques responsibly, ethically.
This has been fantastic. A really great overview of ethical persuasion. I'm already thinking about how I can apply this to my life. But before we get too carried away with our like newfound persuasive powers, let's shift gears again and talk about something a little bit more controversial. Subliminal messaging.
Subliminal messaging. the hidden world of messages and subconscious influence.
It sounds a bit like science fiction to me. Does subliminal messaging actually work?
That's still debated.
Oh,
Some studies show that, yeah, it can influence our thoughts and feelings and behaviors.
okay.
But other studies, they haven't found any significant effects.
So it's like a hidden code that our brains might be able to crack, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay. I'm really curious about this now. What's the history of this whole idea? Where did it all begin?
So the concept itself, it's actually been around for over a century. One of the earliest books on the subject was called The New Psychology, and it was published in 1907. And basically, it just laid out this idea. Messages presented below conscious awareness, your brain can still process them.
Wow, so this has been around for a while. Are there any early examples of how it was used?
So one of the earliest examples actually comes from Knight Dunlap. He was an American professor of psychology, and this was back in the early 1900s. And he used a visual illusion called the Muller-Lyer illusion. It's where you have two lines, and they're the same length, but they appear to be different lengths because of the arrows at the ends of the lines.
Oh, I've seen those. It's so weird. It messes with your brain.
Yeah, and so Dunlap, he subtly incorporated those arrows into his presentation, like flashing them really quickly so people wouldn't consciously see them. And he found that those subliminal arrows actually influenced how people perceived the lines.
So even though they didn't know they were seeing the arrows,
Mm-hmm.
their brains were still processing that information.
Hmm.
Wow. That's really interesting. So that sparked a wave of interest in subliminal messaging.
Yeah, and all its potential to, influence people.
Are there any other famous early examples?
One of the most famous and controversial is from 1957, James Vicker. He did this experiment during a movie screening in New Jersey.
Okay, what did he do?
So he used this device called a tachistoscope to flash the words, drink Coca-Cola and hungry, eat popcorn on the screen for just a fraction of a second, every few seconds throughout the movie.
So the audience couldn't actually see it.
Right, they weren't consciously aware of the messages, and the results were really surprising. Sales of Coca-Cola and popcorn, they skyrocketed after that.
That is incredible, but also kind of creepy to think that our choices could be influenced by these things we're not even aware of.
Yeah, it definitely raises some ethical concerns, especially when it comes to advertising and marketing.
Yeah, it's like if people don't know they're being targeted, that's not really fair, is it?
Exactly. And that's why a lot of countries actually have regulations in place to limit or prohibit the use of subliminal messaging in advertising.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. So it seems like it might work, this subliminal messaging thing, but we don't really fully understand how it works.
Yeah, the evidence is mixed, but it's definitely an interesting area of study.
For sure. Now I'm curious about the different types of subliminal messages. Is it just flashing words on a screen? Or are there other ways to do it?
You're right, it's not just about words on a screen. There are two main types, visual and auditory.
Okay, visual. So what are visual subliminal messages?
So those are images or words that are flashed really quickly, or they're embedded within a larger image, so they're kind of hidden below the threshold of conscious perception.
So those rumors about hidden symbols or messages and logos and stuff, or in movies.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is that even if you don't consciously see them, your brain is still processing them.
This is making me want to go back and analyze all my favorite movies and look for hidden messages.
You might be surprised what you find. Now, let's talk about auditory subliminal messages.
Okay.
So those are words or sounds that are embedded within, like music or, speech. Other audio recordings, again, below the level of conscious awareness.
So a secret message hidden in a song.
Exact.
I've heard those stories about bands hiding satanic messages in their music that you can only hear if you play it backwards. Is that real or is that just an urban legend?
That's more of a, conspiracy theory. There's really no evidence to support that.
Too bad. I was hoping to uncover some secrets.
Even without backward masking, there are still lots of ways that auditory subliminal messages can be used.
Like what?
They can be used in self-help recordings to, promote positive affirmations or boost self-esteem.
It's like a subliminal pep talk.
Yeah. Or sometimes they're used in retail settings, played over the store's sound system to discourage shoplifting or promote certain products.
It's like a subliminal security guard.
Exactly. It's kind of wild when you think about how many messages we're constantly bombarded with. both the obvious ones and the hidden ones.
Yeah, it makes you really think about how much we're influenced by our environment.
Hmm.
Even if we don't realize it, it's like our brains are always taking in information, whether we want to or not.
That's why it's so important to be a critical consumer of information,
Yeah.
Be aware of the potential for subliminal influence and make conscious choices about what you let into your mind.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another really interesting concept that's particularly relevant today in our digital world, and that's neurolinguistic programming, NLP.
Ah, yes. NLP, the art and science of understanding how language influences the brain
Okay.
and how we can use that knowledge to achieve our goals.
Okay, I like it. But before we dive into like the specifics, can you just give me a quick overview? Like, what is NLP all about?
So NLP is based on this idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected, and that by changing our language patterns, we can actually change our experiences.
So it's like we can rewire our brains with words.
That's a great analogy. By identifying and changing our limiting beliefs and negative self-talk, we can create much more empowering and positive experiences.
So it's like self-help, but with a linguistic twist.
Exactly. And it's often used in therapy, coaching, personal development.
Okay, yeah.
Really helps people overcome challenges, achieve their goals.
Okay. I'm starting to see how NLP could be useful. But what are the specific techniques involved? How does it actually work?
One of the key techniques is called anchoring.
Anchoring.
Yeah. And this involves associating a specific emotion or state of mind with a particular word, image, or even a physical touch.
Okay, can you give me an example? I'm having trouble picturing this.
Sure. Let's say you want to feel more confident before you give a presentation.
Right, yeah.
You could choose a word like power or an image like, a roaring lion. That evokes that feeling of confidence for you.
Okay, yeah.
And then you would repeatedly pair that anchor with that feeling of confidence by visualizing it, saying the word out loud, maybe even doing a physical gesture, whatever works for you.
So you're training your brain to connect that anchor with that feeling.
Exactly. And eventually you can use that anchor to access that feeling whenever you need it.
It's like having a secret weapon against stage fright.
Exactly. Another powerful technique is reframing, which is about changing how we perceive and interpret information.
We talked about framing earlier in the context of persuasion.
Hmm.
How is reframing different?
So framing is about how we present information to other people, but reframing is about how we perceive and interpret information ourselves.
So it's about changing our own internal dialogue.
Yes, exactly. By changing how we think about something, we can change how we experience it. So for example, if you're afraid of public speaking, you might reframe that by focusing on the positives, like the opportunity to share your ideas with people or to connect with the audience.
So instead of seeing it as a threat, you see it as a challenge or an
Okay.
opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay.
And by changing our thoughts, we can change our feelings, and then that changes our behaviors.
That's powerful. It seems like NLP is all about taking control of our thoughts and then using language to create positive changes.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, reframing, check. What other NLP techniques are there?
Another powerful one is modeling. And this is about studying the behaviors and thought patterns of successful people.
Oh, so learn from the best.
Exactly. NLP practitioners, they believe that if we understand how successful people think, how they behave, we can adopt those patterns and get similar results.
So it's like having a blueprint for success. So modeling is about observing and then trying to replicate the patterns of people that we admire.
Exactly. You identify the key behaviors, beliefs, and then you adapt those to your own life, to your goals.
Modeling, check. This is so fascinating. I can already see how I could use some of these NLP techniques. It's a whole new set of tools for self-improvement.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see how you can apply this stuff.
It's like we've unlocked a whole new level, right? But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to acknowledge that NLP, while it can be super powerful, can also be misused.
That's a really important point. Like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Really depends on the person using it.
So it's not just about learning the techniques, it's about using them ethically.
Exactly. You have to approach it with a strong sense of integrity.
Okay, I'm
I
glad
get
you
it.
said that. We don't want to create an army of master manipulators. We just want to be more effective communicators.
Right, precisely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into dark psychology, manipulation, ethical persuasion, and even NLP. What are some key takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
Well, first, I hope they have a better understanding of the tactics that people use to influence each other, both intentionally and
Just
unintentionally.
that awareness is key, right?
Yeah, once you're aware of it, you're less likely to fall for it.
Exactly. And hopefully they've also picked up some practical strategies for how to actually protect themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Setting boundaries, being assertive, trusting your gut, developing emotional intelligence, all of those things are so important.
And it's not just about defense.
Right.
We also talked about how to use these principles ethically for good, for positive influence.
Absolutely. We talked about the power of storytelling, knowing your audience, being reasonable, appealing to emotions. All of those can be used to create stronger relationships and achieve your goals. But do it ethically.
This has been a wild ride, exploring both the dark side and the light side of human behavior.
It's a fascinating field.
It really is.
And, I think the biggest takeaway is that knowledge is power. The more we understand ourselves, the more we understand others, the better we'll be able to deal with everything.
So well said. This has really been eye-opening. I feel like I have this new perspective on how we communicate and influence each other.
Good. Glad.
It's like I've unlocked this secret code,
Yeah.
but it's for human behavior.
And it's a code that's constantly changing.
That's true.
So stay curious, keep learning, and never stop exploring.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your insights. This has been amazing.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you have the power to choose how you respond to the world around you. Stay informed, stay aware, and never stop questioning.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.